Regarding a person that eats a whole food plant-based diet, exercises, does aerobics, resistance exercise, sleeps well, is emotionally healthy, takes EPA, DHA, takes B12, does everything they should do, and does it well. Do they sometimes die of heart attacks, cancer, and Alzheimer's? Or does this give you some great protection? In other words, sometimes there's this mythical feeling like, well, I'm eating a whole food plant-based diet and I'm totally protected. Are we protected very much? Or are you saying sometimes people who do everything perfect, they die, it doesn't work, and it just, it's like not smoking. It's much better for you than smoking, but you still can get lung cancer.
I'll grab the heart part and let everybody talk about the other organs. I very much caution my patients, and I have a lot that really do a great job on a whole food plant-based diet, just by the textbook, by Dr. Fuhrman's textbook. But I caution them they're not bulletproof, because what we have appreciated is the rise of ability to test genetics and appreciation of the input of genetics. We've discussed genetics a little bit here with our differential ability to convert ALA into EPA DHA, but we inherit a gene called ApoE4 that raises our heart risk. I think one of the biggest is we inherit the ability to make lipoprotein little a additional cholesterol that can in some people be lethal. We inherit a gene called 9p21 that may be the most potent gene for promoting cardiovascular disease. So I have a handful of extremely devout whole food plant-based diet heart patients who've had their second heart attack, fortunately not fatal. And almost all of them have easily identifiable genetic inputs. They didn't go start eating the wrong diet. They just did as much as they could with lifestyle, and we had to work through the rest. So we're almost bulletproof, but I never would tell somebody skip testing, skip, any kind of screening, from mammography to colonoscopy, if you believe that these are reasonable tests, to Cologuard, to cardiovascular testing, because genetics are in a growth industry. Our ability to do a little swab in the mouth and characterize a whole lot of risk factors.
I would like to comment on top of that. So I agree with everything that he said. We also like to look at, can we also reduce risk by changing epigenetics, which is what we're doing with diet, lifestyle, environment, and their belief system. So yes, and I will also agree that I see in certain patients who have been plant-based hardcore, can they still have these other conditions? Absolutely, because disease is multifactorial. It's not just only this. So, but it is reducing their risk, and it still reduces their risk overall morbidity, mortality of all diseases, probably more than anything else. So I would never want to just say, oh, just because there's one person or Dr. Kahn or Dr. Fuhrman or I have had a patient that had cancer that was plant-based, that people say, then I'm not going to do the diet. It's like, if you have a car and you're trying to, be safe, you want to have as many safety features in the car, right? You want to have airbags, you want to have, emergency brakes, you want to have side airbags and everything else like that. The more that you add, it does reduce your risk. Doesn't mean that you will never get into a car accident, but you're more likely to get out of that car and survive that accident. And so that's what we're looking at. I think a lot of times people will say, I heard one thing and this is not therefore not to do it. I like to look at it as like, this is all, I'm not a perfectionist, I'm a risk reductionist. We need to be reducing the risk of all these, lifestyle, dietary, environmental factors. And that's as good as it gets. Some people will have bad genetics, but it's still a smaller percentage of the population. Where the problem is that people may, even if they have bad genetics, most people won't have the bad genetics, but we're just stacking bad lifestyle. So, and environment and diet and belief system. So we have to be working on all of them. And there will still be certain, insurances that people can still get a disease, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be optimizing their health to reduce that.
And let's I'm agreeing, of course, but I want to put it in perspective that still, even the bad genetic people are an extremely small percent of the population.
Small percent.
A tiny percent. In other words, I think that people adopting both a very exceptionally healthy diet of nutritional excellence in combination with achieving a normal body weight, where they actually get their body fat below 15% if they're a male and below 25% if they're a female. Otherwise, they're not. I don't consider a person a nutritarian unless they're moving in that direction or they've achieved it. And then you get that, you've reduced your risk of heart disease by more 1,000-fold, not by 100-fold, but by 1,000-fold. There are some genetic exceptions, but those exceptions are very rare, maybe in 1 in 500 people. I've had more than 10, so in any case, for most majority, even with lung cancer and smoking, the risk of lung cancer goes down every decade they're off the cigarettes. after 20 years of being off cigarettes, the risk of having lung cancer is less than 1% because they're 20 years off cigarettes. And of course, it's the same thing here. Once you achieve decades of eating healthfully and you've achieved the healthy parameter and lived that way for decades, then your risk continues to improve and your risk will be exceptionally low. But of course, there are always these unusual genetic exceptions, but I don't want people to be walking around with fear, because fear is not a good thing for your health. And I think the freedom from fear is one of the benefits of following this way of diet, because the risk of I could still die, tomorrow by falling off a ski lift or something, or getting in a car accident or whatever, or somebody from the meat industry could shoot me. But
gunshot wounds are daily now, so that's actually a significant risk, right? We have to start thinking of other things.
Maybe some of the other nutritional gurus may kill me, but in any case, our risk of death is so much reduced that we really can have freedom of fear of these illnesses, except for in rare cases. So I'm not walking around afraid of cancer. I don't have to get colonoscopies. I'm not getting mammograms. I'm not getting all these tests. That's kind of a joke, but it's still not. It's real. I'm saying it. Don't feel the need for these tests, and because they have risks. These tests have risks. Doing colonoscopy has risks, and doing mammograms have risks. So I'm also more of a naturalist. I'm more of an anti-medical testing. I'm for, I want people to not to have to need for so much medical care and doctoring, because that involves like fear of disease and an unhealthy, unnatural lifespan. I'm being more in touch with nature and more positivity, and I don't think you have to. And so there is exceptions. I'm not disagreeing with what they're saying at all. I'm just saying I'm lean to give people more confidence and to feel that this will work for them except for exceptionally rare conditions, rare occurrences.
In 2020, a book came out by Dr. James Nicolantonio called The Salt Fix: Why the Experts Got It All Wrong and How Eating More Might Save Your Life. Recently, in the last month or two or whatever it was, Sally Norton came out with a book called Toxic Superfoods: How Oxalate Overload is Making You Sick and How to Get Better. And the toxic superfood says, I guess I won't go into much, but she's basically saying, after suffering for decades from chronic health problems, nutrition educator Sally Norton discovered that the culprits were the chemical toxins called oxalates lurking in her healthy, organic, plant-heavy diet. She shines light on how our modern diets are overloaded with oxalates and offers fresh solutions. So in other words, there's one book from 2020 saying eat salt, and now there's a book in 2023 saying that there's a concern with oxalates, and the people who reviewed this oxalates are people who promote keto diets and paleo diets. So do you have any thoughts on the salt, and do you have any thoughts on oxalates?
So let me talk
By the
about
way, you left out
oxalates.
the carnivore diet. Why didn't you
Yeah.
get the books about eating a high meat diet? Because they're out there too,
Yeah. If I can, let me talk about the oxalates, and I'll let the other two talk about salt, because I know they have more about it. But on the oxalates, so there's always been this argument, especially in conventional medicine, when someone has had kidney stones, they went to the emergency room, they had kidney stone, the oxalate stone is your kidney. They gave them a handout and it said, "Oh, here are the foods that have oxalates: animal protein and greens." Right? So then everybody just obviously just stopped the greens because they want to eat them anyways, or they said, "I don't want to eat more greens or healthy greens." But what the data will show is they have actually done crossover studies showing that oxalates coming from animal protein is different than oxalates coming from plant protein. Now, and when they crossed it over, when the patients were followed for kidney stones, that the kidney stones only accelerated their growth or occurrence in the patient that are eating oxalates coming from animal protein. However, can we eat too much raw greens that can increase oxalate formation? Yes, we measure that in our patients, right? But what do you do to help reduce the oxalates? You cook your food, right? So remember, we did invent fire. And so I always tell people, like, because we have a certain percentage of the population will come in like super raw, and their oxalates may be super off the chart. So I'm like, hey, instead of eating all raw, why don't you like saute, lightly cook, lightly blanch some of the greens, and we can actually measure it, and their oxalates will kind of come back down to a normal range, putting them out of risk. But I don't think it's what this end cause or whatever this book is talking about, a danger. It's just that there, again, with every diet, there's these extremes where sometimes people might be going only to one far level. And I think no, like when we follow it normally, and if you eat a normal diet, and if you actually use cooking methods occasionally, which we should be, that's what we've been doing for thousands of years, right? Once we've had fire, then I don't think that's a problem. I think these are like little things that people like to throw out there, spin out there, making it, you know, like the wheat belly and all these things. They like to pick one thing and then make this whole havoc. The idea is you have to look at all these other aspects of diet and self, and then make sure that you're shifting over plant-based.
I'll just say there's a fabulous review by a PhD, Deanna Minich, Minich, on what are called anti-nutrients in 2022. And she just goes through every one, hundreds of references from lectins to oxalates to phytates, and basically blasts them away that, you know, theoretically there could be some risk, but in reality, the benefits of eating spinach outweigh the risks of oxalates in most people. Just vary your food around. I'll leave salt to Dr. Fuhrman.